Oh, welcome to the Sharpe Show. So happy to have you with me this evening. A little bit past 7 p.m. on the East Coast. And yes, I have today. I didn't know if I wanted to bring these crazy people on tonight. Not crazy. I love them both. That's fine. So one of these guys you've seen more than once on the show, so you probably think it's crazy. But I wanted to bring some people on the show to talk about something that we have chatted about often. Since RFK Jr. was running last year, we had chatted many times about third party movements, what happened to the Green Party, what happened to the Libertarian Party, blah, blah, blah. And you guys often get mad at me and scold me about my Libertarian Party. I know you do. That's fine. But I said, wait a minute, I'm going to bring on some people here who are talking about another party that's actually up and coming and trying to make some impact also. So maybe this is the future. I'm bringing on, if I could, two people. I guess I'm going to call them co-chairs, the co-chairs of the American Capitalist Party, Mark Pellegrino and Michael Liebowitz. How are you guys doing?
Fantastic.
Very good. Thank you.
Look at that. I'm glad to have you guys here. So if you want to check out what they're doing, you can head over to AmericanCapitalistParty.org, not .com.org. Get it right. .org. That matters to check them out. I am happy to see you guys. So I have to ask almost off the bat, right? The first thing I think of, I'm going to give it to you straight. The word capitalism in America today, oh my God, people, particularly youth, they hate the word. I just did a show last week on people who are saying the reason why we're lonely is capitalism. The reason why we're insert bad thing, whatever the bad thing is because capitalism. The reason why I can't find a boyfriend or a girlfriend is because my car broke down. Because capitalism. Everything is because capitalism. And the pushback, particularly on the youth, the TikTok world, is almost non-existent. You've got to hear that.
Oh, yeah. Do you want me to go first, Michael, or do you?
Sure.
Yeah, well,
you're the big dog. You go first.
It's not hard to see why that is. They've been told from the time they were in kindergarten all the way through secondary school and into college that capitalism is a terrible thing. It's the root of all evil. Yep. Meanwhile, benefiting from all its wonderful, wonderful products. So I don't necessarily blame them for the fact that all they've heard is capitalism is a bad thing. They've heard selfishness is a bad thing too.
Sure.
And so it's up to us as capitalists to convince them that capitalism isn't just about material things. It's really a moral approach to the economy. It's a particular kind of ethics, which we call individualism, which means that you are a sovereign being who has complete and total control over your own life. So capitalism isn't just about private people owning the means of production, which is essentially saying private people own the means of their existence, their life, since we all...
That sounds like you're becoming a socialist now, Mark, with people owning the means of their labor. What?
No, they're not. It's not that they own the means of their labor. They are sovereign human beings. They're sovereign human beings who have total control over their lives, and the economic system that enables them to have complete and total free choice is capitalism.
But let me push back on that if I could, right? There's no doubt that people say that sounds good, but Mark, you're privileged, right? You're this privileged guy. You're a white guy in America. You're an actor. You're a bazillionaire. You're privileged. Why do you hate poor people, Mark? Right? This is what I'm sure you get that. What about the person who isn't doing well? The person who falls down? Something that Micah knows nothing about. What about someone that goes to jail or something, right? How about that? What about that person?
Well, see, that's the thing, right? When the problem is when you're dealing with people that are just going to turn their backs on capitalism no matter what. To me, like everything you just said about Mark is not true of me. I'm not successful. I'm not rich. I was in prison for a quarter century. I've only been out for 2 years. And I learned about capitalism in prison. And I learned that it is both the only moral system there is, but it's also the system that creates the most abundance, the highest standard of living. Now, the people will push back against me and say, "Oh, you've been brainwashed."
Sure.
But what you've been brainwashed? You're a class traitor, whatever. I mean, and there's all these methods. I had a friend that I had two friends in prison. One was a black guy, Puerto Rican. One was a Puerto Rican guy. The Puerto Rican guy heard, "Oh, the white guy is brainwashing you, and you're turning your back on your people." And the black guy heard, "Oh my God, you're selling out." These are the tactics that people employ, and you can never get around it when it's people that are prone to buy that kind of garbage. I don't think are ever going to be.
Yeah, but hold on. Let me hear what Mark said. Mark literally just said they've been, they've been taught this, right? This is what people hear. So it isn't just those people, Michael. There's a lot of
there's
everyday
others.
people who are just out to living their lives.
But Larry,
hold on. Individualism is bad. Greed is bad. Selfishness is bad. Why are you guys mean? There's lots of people who aren't ideologically either side who still believe that.
Yes, but you asked specifically when in relation to Mark, what about the people who are going to say it's because he's rich? And my point to that is, if somebody's going to take that tack, it's very difficult to argue because they're just looking for a reason. They're not actually addressing an argument. They're addressing the person. And they're going to do that no matter what.
Can I address something that was addressed to me?
Please.
I mean, you say a person wouldn't believe the fact that I like capitalism for pure reasons just because it's purely moral because I'm rich. Well, I didn't start there.
Okay.
I didn't start rich. In fact, I started in a lower middle class family, raised by a single mother with abusive men throughout my life. I never grew up with a father figure and didn't really know who my real father was until COVID hit, and I found out who my real father was. And so my mom took me out of public school in the 8th grade to put me in a Catholic school. It was such a great sacrifice to her that I started working. I mean, I was working before from 12 on, mowing lawns and doing the things delivering newspapers and things that a kid can do before they can legally work according to the government. But I took on a job specifically to pay for my books because I didn't want her to take on that extra expense. And I did that throughout the entirety of my high school career because of her sacrifice. And she did that a great sacrifice. She never made what I would consider a strong living. And in fact, had to take on two boarders, while I was trying to pursue acting and still working 4 jobs and moving from place to place to place. In order to survive, she had to take on 2 boarders to pay her rent.
There we go. Okay, there we go. So, but with that in mind, if I'm going to have a capitalist party, great. Isn't someone going to say, that sounds good, but what about the people who actually do fall down, right? What if the person, obviously, if you're going to say you're a capitalist, talk about individual responsibility. So that means when someone makes a mistake or is unlucky, either one, that you are going to allow them to collapse or fail. What about that support structure that society will require, right? What about that support structure? How does an American Capitalist Party square that circle saying we care about capitalism and individualism, but still people are going to fall down? How do I take care of my people who get hit by a car and can't work or whatever the case may be?
Do you think it's moral to have a support structure that's by force or voluntary?
I think that most Americans believe in their hearts that if we vote for it, it's not force.
Okay.
I think they honestly believe that.
But
If we voted for it, it's not force.
Let's say the majority of people vote for it. 51% of the people vote for it. 49% of the people don't. What do you think the 49% of the people consider that 51% vote? Do they consider it force now that they're compelled to reach into their pocket?
I would argue that half of Americans, of that 49% that's remaining, right? Say they made a law that said, if you have, for the sake of argument, 50% of people in America are under 5'9". I don't know if that's true. I'm making that up, right? For the sake of argument, that's true. So they passed a law that says if you're under 5'9", you have to pay an extra 10% tax. And they passed that law. Half of the people in America who are under 5'9" would go, man, that's not force. I better vote harder next time. I'm telling you, half of America who's under 5'9" would not think that is force. They believe that if it is voted, it's not force. That is obviously I'm on your side here. I'm just
That
saying
says something.
that's what
That
I'm
says
saying.
something about our civics. That says something that people don't
Correct.
understand the nature of government, and that when
Yes.
51% of the people can vote out the wills of 49% of the people, and consider that not force it, there's a disconnect there that's happening. But look, I just read
Yes.
an article recently that said Americans are the most compassionate and caring people on earth, and they're the most charitable people on earth, and give billions and billions and billions in charity, despite being hyper taxed the way we are today.
Yep.
Now, I wager to say if over 50% of the people would vote for charitable contributions to a safety net, they would likely contribute to a safety net
Okay.
in some other voluntary way. And that makes it moral. Why?
Got it.
Because they can still choose. They can still
Got it.
choose. It's not moral if you can't say no. Michael, I'm sorry.
Okay.
You wanted to say something. I saw it in your face.
Well, I do, because I think that the
Go ahead.
exact phrasing of the question is the problem. And that's what we ultimately have to teach against. And that's why young people view things that way, because the question you initially asked is, well, what about the people that can't make it? What about the people that are poor
Yep.
and need a safety net, that sort of thing?
Yep.
But that is not the way to address this, because the implicit assumption of that question is that other people owe them to take care of them. And as long as people out there believe that it's somebody else's moral duty to take care of other people, well, then you're always going to have, well, what about this guy that fell through the cracks?
Yes.
We need government. So what we need to get to is the situation where people don't think of it that way, where we don't think that it's that we're not our brother's keeper, that all of us owe everybody else, but that we are individual human beings with individual rights. And one of those rights is to not help if we choose not to, and to help if we choose to. Now, of course, people are charitable, and prior to the welfare state, they were even more charitable. So it is accurate, like Mark said, that yes, people are going to get taken care of. Americans are not going to have people starving in the street.
Yeah, but you said something though, Mike. You said it. You said we have to get people to believe that.
You need
what
to
I'm saying is right now, that's not the case. If you see one of the most popular words used, and this is particularly in Democratic Party, but also Republican, but heavy Democrat, is the word deserve. You will hear that word all in every single political speech. You're an American, you deserve. You're a woman, you deserve. You're a man, you deserve. Deserve means, yeah, Michael, open your pocketbook. You got to pay me because I
does. Yeah. And obviously there's a tremendous battle that we have to fight. It's an uphill battle. It's not going to be easy. And I'm not even predicting victory. But if you're asking me what needs to be done is education needs to go out there. We need to have a complete rethinking of morality and what it is moral to do and not do. And that leads to a theory of rights. And ultimately, people have to come to see that it's not other people's responsibility to take care of them. Because as long as you have that way of looking at things, you're always going to have that, the situation that you described. So it's going to take education. It's going to take advocacy. It's going to take debating. Like I like to debate. I go out there and I put my ideas out there. I'm willing to debate anybody on them.
Hey, Michael,
that's what needs to happen.
I also wanted to say something too. I think people also think of dignity. They always use dignity also with this.
Yes.
Deserves, they're owed this thing. They use dignity as if dignity is supplying somebody with material values. If you simply supply people with material values, then you give them their dignity. But that's not the case. Self-esteem, which I sort of mix up with dignity, is not based on what you have. It's based on what you do and how successful you are relative to your hierarchy of values in achieving what you do. And so it's very important for people to understand that dignity is not achieved by giving people material things, but by allowing them the freedom to do, to experience, and to achieve the values and their potentiality. That's what gives people human dignity. And that's out of the power of the politics completely. Human dignity is not a power that the politicians can bestow on people. It's only something that human beings can bestow on themselves through their own actions.
So let me give you a couple of questions about the party aspect, if I could. Right now, Mike Voss is in. He says, to you, Mark, in what way does your capitalist party differ from a constitutional party? So far, you sound generally as just strict adherence to the Constitution. Is he right? Is he wrong? What's going on there?
I think he's partially right. Both Michael and I have deep respect for the Constitution. We think that the government is supposed to be a force regulator. But because it has a monopoly on regulating force, it itself has to be bound by explicit rules that it cannot go outside of. Now, I don't know of any constitutionalists, for the most part today, within the Republican Party who actually abide by that. They're willing to push the boundaries of the Constitution just like the left is, in order for them to achieve whatever political ends they think
Thomas Massey, maybe?
appropriate. Tons of Republicans want to push the especially the man in the White House right now, who's definitely pushing us towards a constitutional crisis at the moment. But I think there are aspects of the Constitution that need to be amended. So although I am not as strict a originalist as Michael may call himself, forgive me for speaking for you, Michael, I'm more of a person that I believe in the original intent of the authors. That might not be exactly what Michael's talking about, or the original meaning of the words, and going to that. I think that's a very important means of interpreting the Constitution. But I also think there are enough contradictions in the document itself that need to be fixed and worked out by legal scholars, so that statists can never take advantage of the Constitution and use it to usurp the rights of individuals.
Okay, all right. Well, Dan says the opposite. He says the LP, Libertarian Party, is already the American Capitalist Party. Is Dan right?
Can I take this, please?
Oh my God, he's going to yell at me.
Yeah, go, Mike.
So I was the spokesperson for the Libertarian Party of Connecticut. When I first got out of prison, I knew from being in prison about the divides within the liberty movement, broadly speaking, between anarchists and minarchists, objectivists and libertarians. And my goal when I got out of prison, I said, I'm going to try to unify all these things.
Okay.
I did not realize the types of dichotomies and schisms that were there that are just not breachable because they're fundamentally different.
Yep.
So, but I became a member of the Libertarian Party. I became the spokesperson for the Party of Connecticut. And I started to see things. One of the things that, a couple of things that ultimately drove me from the party were the Alabama Mises Caucus endorsing the Unabomber, for instance, or the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire putting out horrible things about Jews and just really gross things. And I brought that to the chairperson of our party in Connecticut. I said, I want to come out as the spokesperson. Allow me to address this. And he, well, we don't really get involved with other states. So I realized there, okay, I'm so different. But there was something else, and it's more of and I'm sure you can relate to what I'm about to say, Larry. We are the Connecticut Libertarian Party of Connecticut. I am a close friend of the most popular talk show host in Connecticut, Todd Feinberg. He's not on the air now, but he was then. Todd told me, he said, Michael, go to your party, have them set up an event, and I'll come and speak. We can advertise it on the radio. We can do all these things. I said, man, that's awesome. So I went and I met with the guy and I said, listen, this is what we need to do. We can set this up. Todd will speak. I'll speak. Once the people here. Now, Todd is thought of as a conservative / libertarian, but so you would have brought an abundance of conservatives there. And what the guy told me is, well, we'll have to run it through our Discord chat, and we're going to do this, and we got to talk to this one and seek approval here, and this one's got to sign this. And I'm like, dude, we need to get this done. So there were a few things that caused me to leave the Libertarian Party. There was the very distasteful thing done by some of the state affiliates. There was the inaction on the part of my local affiliate. But also, if you just look, I mean, to say it's the Capitalist Party when the chairperson of the party this time around virtually endorsed Donald Trump. She's out there talking about how Robert F. Kennedy is a libertarian in the cabinet. Donald Trump is not a capitalist, and neither is RFK. And if you're supporting these people under the guise of being libertarians or being capitalists, that's just not going to work. With our party, we truly are the party of principle. You're never going to see Mark or I endorse a Republican or a Democrat. It's not going to happen.
Two parts to that. Number one, how do you ensure that your party doesn't just become that, right? I'm sure when a Libertarian Party was made in 1972, they weren't thinking, I can't wait till we become bureaucratic knuckleheads who do nothing. I don't think they were thinking that at all. They were probably thinking something similar to what you're thinking as you move your party forward. I assume that to be true. How do you stop that? And then a secondary question, why become a political party? Forward Forward Party had the same issue. Why become a political party? Just be a PAC, right? Because the Forward Party hasn't really been very party-like. And when they could have, like RFK Jr. was a very good candidate for the Forward Party. They didn't take him. They were so worried about stopping Trump. They didn't care, right? And now you look at someone like No Labels. No Labels could have easily taken someone like an RFK Jr. They didn't. They were worried about stopping Trump, right? They both were worried about stopping Trump. And so they shouldn't have been a party last year. Why don't you guys just be a PAC or be a nonprofit? Why a party?
Well, I mean, your first question was why won't we turn out like the libertarians have turned out?
Yep.
And I think the answer to that is something that Michael just said. We're a party of principle. And I can't say that the libertarians are a party of principle. In fact, they've so eschewed principle that they have communists within their ranks, anarcho-communists, anarcho-capitalists, minarchists, anarchists themselves. There's a slew of disparate interests within this party that they're all trying to incorporate under this general wing of libertarianism because they don't have any moral principles guiding them. Our moral principles that guide us are individual rights. And on the individual level, the moral principle that guides us is rational egoism, which we'll probably get to one of your questions that you're going to have later on. Now, why have a party? Because we think the American people don't really have choices in front of them.
Okay.
Right? What they have right now are two statists arguing about which preferences should dominate the public sphere. And so we're witnessing, and I guess over the decades of politicians using the word democracy to describe our political system has now rubbed off on everybody. They think we're in a democracy. Well, unfortunately, we're in a spoil system democracy. So it's within the interests of each tribe to gain control of the levers of power so that their particular tribe gets to, eat from the spoils of war. And I think people are generally quite sick of this. I think they really do see that they don't have a choice between the two. And this is why the left and the right can sometimes stretch across the aisle and compromise with one another, because they believe that statism is okay. Look at DOGE, for example. DOGE is the Department of Government Efficiency does not question the premise of whether or not the government should be engaged in 99.9% of the things they do. It just says it should be more efficient in doing these 99.9% of the things that they do that are
but then let me give you some pushback on this one, right? If I can. Sure. And I'm going back to the actual American population, right? And I say this because I've talked to them all the time. I ran for office more than once. I've met a lot of voters. The vast majority of Americans would say you're crazy to think that the government is not supposed to be doing these things. They think, of course, if not the government, nobody can. They honestly believe that. They're not ideologues. It's to your earlier point, Mark. They've been raised on this their entire life. They honestly believe that if the government doesn't regulate, then we're all going to die in the streets. They honestly believe that to be true. They believe if the government doesn't educate my kids won't be able to read. They believe if the government doesn't run hospitals, we're all going to have cancer and die. And I know it sounds hyperbolic, but a lot of Americans honestly believe that.
That's because they believe in the dichotomy, the false dichotomy that altruism puts us in, where if to the altruist, you have two choices: to sacrifice yourself or be the sacrificial animal for others. And so people think if you're going after your own interests, the altruist zero-sum game world means I am sacrificing you to my interests, and vice versa. So if I want to be a good person, I have to sacrifice myself to your interests. If you want to be a bad person, I sacrifice you to my interests. And this is the false dichotomy they put people in. Capitalism doesn't put people in that. Rational egoism doesn't put people in that false moral bind, and nor does individualism. Individualism is just a moral standard. Individual rights and individualism is just a moral standard that says you are a moral end unto yourself. No one.
Well, it's a political party that's actually moral.
Well, we understand that morality and politics are linked, not in the way that the Republicans think it is, in that they're trying to marry Christianity with some form of nationalism. But we understand that politics is an expression of social ethics, right? So if I believe in rational egoism as an individual, I think that socially, the way I should behave is respecting the sovereignty of everybody around me. And that means I respect their volition, their free will, their property, until, of course, they give me reason not to, by using force.
Right. Let me stay on the party piece if I could. I'm looking over at Rumble, and Sarge Apone asks, how do things like working families, conservative, Green Party, socialists, how were they able to vet their candidates? So how can you vet your candidates, and how can you get on the ballot, right? That's the issue. Most of the small parties have two problems: getting candidates and then getting them on the ballot. Are you guys working on that now? Not working on that? Is that part of your future?
Yes, to all of the above. Right now, we have somebody who's going to be going up for city council in Alabama, in a town in Alabama, in August. He is the secretary of the party, so he adheres 100% to the principles of the party. And yes, we're in the midst of vetting people now for other offices, and they have to agree with the party platform. There's no compromise with the principles here. Because as I'm going to quote a philosopher that you think is controversial, I think, and that you're connecting us to, as Ayn Rand has said, and I paraphrase, a compromise between good and bad benefits the bad. So we believe our principles are sound. They're grounded in reason. They're grounded in rational ethics and individualism. And why would we want to compromise that? Why would we want a candidate who compromises those principles?
Wow. Okay. Then I have an obvious question then. Are you going to limit yourself to have very few candidates, and are you okay with that?
Can I take this?
Go.
Okay. So any political party necessarily is going to limit itself. Otherwise, they're not a political party, right? You have to limit yourself within certain confines. So somebody in the chat said any party not at war within itself isn't worth its salt. That, of course, that we can have different opinions within the party on a given issue or a given position or whatever. And not everybody in the party has to be an objectivist, but there are fundamental principles that you would have to. I mean, you can't come into the American Capitalist Party and say, well, I agree with you, but we need a welfare state. Right. We have to support the welfare state. You might have somebody who says we need to get rid of the welfare state tomorrow. You might have somebody who says we need to phase it out, but you have to want to get rid of the welfare state. When it comes to, for instance, the death penalty, Mark and I disagree on the death penalty. There's room for disagreement within it. So it's not as restrictive as it may be sounding, but you have to restrict yourself in some way. Otherwise, you're just not a party. What happens is, instead of trying to convince people of your positions and bringing people into the party that way, what political parties do is water themselves down to bring other folks in. And then you just end up with a mess. So when somebody brought up in the chat, I read the chats as we're going by.
Oh, it's going. You see it going.
Yeah, sure. And they talked about the Libertarian Party. And the difference between us and the Libertarian Party, one of them anyways, is this. There's people within the Libertarian Party that are fundamentally different, right? An anarchist is fundamentally different from what a minarchist is. You can't get around that. There's really not much room to argue there. You have people within the Libertarian Party that are like, what's the word I'm looking for here? Oh, God, I can't remember. It doesn't matter. But they're very extreme in their advocacy, for instance, that there should be zealots. There's zealots against intellectual property, right? I'm constantly arguing with Stefan Kinsella about this issue. And I like him. I like Stefan a lot. But every single topic that we argue about, he brings back IP. There's no way that he and I could ever compromise on that issue, because I'm pro-IP and he's vehemently anti-IP. So you can't have just discrepancies when it comes to principle within a party. It doesn't work. That doesn't mean that there can't be differences about the application and things of that nature. And that's what, we know, like, you're asking good questions, Larry. We know that the odds of us becoming the third party out there, it's a tough road to hoe. But to paraphrase a man who gave me great advice once, even if a party is a mess, it might be the only chance you have. And somebody told me that once in relation to the Libertarian Party. And I think we can figure out who that is. But my point is that in my view, this is our best shot, right? So what do you do in that situation? Do you say, well, look, the obstacles are too much. The duopoly.
So let me give you pushback then on
Sure.
On a movement versus a party, right? And the example I'll give you is last year. Robert Kennedy Jr. Bobby Kennedy Jr. tries running as a Democrat. He's been a Democrat his whole life. He wants to be a Democrat. The Democratic Party, their infrastructure says, no, you're not one of us. You can't run. We're going to put things against you. He goes, okay, great. I'm going to run independent. So he goes to run independent. And he sees all the problems that libertarians see, all the issues that he saw. He couldn't get a ballot, dropped $20 million to get in the ballot, couldn't do it. Finally, Trump goes to him and says, hey, join me. I'll give you HHS. I will allow you to push your agenda in my administration. And he goes, okay, yeah, look, I'm getting hammered. I'll do it. So he jumps in, he kisses the ring. He joins the Trump campaign. And whether you're happy with Trump or Maha, whatever your views may be, here is what's true. Prior to RFK Jr. jumping on the Trump train, no one was talking about the Maha stuff. It wasn't a thing. The Republicans weren't talking about food or coloring or whatever is the thing that he's worth, the jab. They weren't about that stuff. That wasn't part of Trump's campaign. So now he's on. It's part of it now. Now, not just that, he's at HHS. Again, you may not like what he's doing, but he is absolutely implementing parts of his plan. He is making impact. Would you be okay with one of your candidates following that model, running as an American capitalist?
No.
And then someone says, hey, let me finish. Someone says, hey, I will put you in my state government and you can literally abolish public schools in my state. If you come on board, I will put you in charge of the Department of Education and you will be the one who will tear down the education in my system, but you got to run as a Democrat or Republican, whatever I am in my state.
Well,
I went long, I know, but
let me quote a great philosopher that I disagree with on damn near everything he ever said. Of what does it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his soul?
Okay.
Right. What you're talking about, first of all, I think RFK Jr., you have to give details about this. RFK Jr., in my view, is a crackpot. He's an ambulance chasing lawyer that has these whacked out views, right? So from the get-go, you're not talking about a rational, principled man. Right?
None of that matters.
It does, but
what
Larry,
I said,
no, it does, and I'm going to get to the why. Because you're talking about this specifically in terms of consequences, right? Straight pragmatism. Look, yes, you are, because he was able to get these consequences that he wants.
Yep, correct.
What you're not talking about is, who did he have to go get in bed with in order to do this? What did he have to give up in order to do this? What did Trump have to do in order to bring him along in terms of the conservative movement?
Let me tell you, if you believe what Bobby Kennedy Jr. believes, which he believes, and his followers I know believe, I've met many of them, that this is literally killing our children. They believe that in their hearts and souls. They believe that 100%. Whether you do or not is irrelevant. They believe that. This is their movement. Maha's their movement. They are getting what they want. If he doesn't give up whatever you say, they get nothing. And the children are still being killed. So isn't that morally better?
No, it's not, because first of all, it reminds me of Henry Hazlitt's great lesson in Frederick Bastiat, the seen and the unseen, right? What you're talking about are the immediate consequences. What are we, 3 months into the Trump administration? Sure. But what are the long-term consequences for the country as a result of these things, right? So yes, you could sell out in the short term and you can get all kinds of great goodies. But what's that going to do to your credibility long term? What's that going to do to the country long term? We are in this for the long haul, right? We're not looking to win an election.
Michael, you are utterly and look, I love you. You're utterly wrong on this one, because you're mad at RFK Jr. and you got to look at it from his point of view.
I'm not mad at RFK Jr.
From his point of view, there's no doubt it is long-term Great. He's banning the colors he wanted to ban.
Larry,
he couldn't do that before.
Larry,
He is getting exactly what he wants long term.
From Charlie Manson's point of view, Larry, from Charlie Manson's point of view, murdering Sharon Tate was a good thing. I don't, if that's Matt, that's base subjectivism. So what if from his point of view?
No, it isn't. It's not at all.
Because hold on, you're talking about RFK Jr.'s point of view. I'm talking about my point of view.
And I'm telling you that he's beating you because he's getting what he wants done and you're not.
He's RFK is definitely an ends justify the means type of guy. And
right.
I don't think that's an appropriate moral code to stand by, to be honest with you. Look, I think the responsibility for what goes inside a child's body is the parents, to be honest with you. It's not the Health and Human Services Department. It's not RFK's responsibility. It's the parents' responsibility to look at the ingredients and to take control of the child's diet. And what you're saying by the Maha movement is, again, robbing people of moral agency in a different way. The left likes to do that too, but the Maha movement is make America healthy again. Well, yeah, the American marketplace can make America healthy again, and responsible parents can make their children healthy again by taking responsibility for their kids. But let me ask you something, Larry. When you talked about compromising in order to get heard or to expand your reach a little bit, would you say I had integrity if I lied from time to time? Would you say I had integrity if I lied when it was convenient, or if I?
It depends, and then let me explain why. If I was sitting here and I was saying, "Tell me that you love taxes, or I will kill Michael," and you went, "I love taxes. I love them so much." That's not a moral choice. Okay,
that's not a moral choice. That's not a moral choice. That's ethics of emergencies, which we're not talking about here. We're talking about it.
Yes, we are.
Consider a man.
We are literally talking about that. Yes, we are.
Emergencies are not valid. That's especially why Trump is probably declaring everything an emergency. So the ethics go out the window, though. I'm telling you. Yes. Okay. So let's not talk about.
I'm agreeing with you.
Let's talk about real ethics. Would you go into business with me if you knew that from time to time I lied and cheated?
Probably not.
Okay. So what Michael and I are telling you is that we believe that there is such a thing as unbreached integrity. We believe it's possible to achieve that by sticking to principles 100%. That doesn't mean we're rigid, guys. It doesn't mean, as Michael expressed, there's flexibility and differences of opinion within the party on various topics. But with respect to certain principles, those principles, we see them as inviolable. We will not budge on them.
Okay. All right. Let me grab. I have a bunch of comments. I think I got my people.
I'm reading the comments.
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna go through some of these if I can. So, alrighty. Billy from X says government can't save poor people. True. What government does very well is service people. It just gives them just enough to stay where they are. It services very well. It doesn't save very well. It's not its skill set. I think.
Can I piggyback on that one? Do you mind?
Please.
Yeah, I would go as far as to say it only saves poor people to the extent that it gets out of people's way and protects people's rights. If it interferes with the market, as it tends to now, if it attempts to save people by diverting capital to those specific purposes, then it tends to make people poorer.
Here we go. Billy also says you have to win at the local level first.
Agree, 100%.
Does your party have that type of mindset?
Yes, that's where we're going. We're going for local places first, and building our way up. And hopefully, the goal is, of course, we're the national party, but we want to have spots in every state, and we'd like to get people in higher offices. But we're going for the local elections.
Larry, it's partly your fault that I'm the co-chairperson of the American Capitalist Party.
You're welcome.
Want me to tell you how? It's interesting. So the last time I saw you in person, Larry, I was talking to you about the possibility of running for office. And you told me that you need, basically you told me, look, it takes a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of effort. Okay. Yep. I have one of those. Right? I have effort. I don't have time and money. Right.
Yep.
So a member of American Capitalist Party was talking to me, and I took what you said seriously because you've actually run, and I do respect you. I mean, I've had good conversations with you both on the show and off.
Yep.
And I was thinking about running, and I just said, that is going to detract. I'm only a little more than 2 years out of prison. I'm trying to build a brand for myself as a talk show host, right? If I go get involved running for office, that's going to take so much away from that. So I told the guy from the American Capitalist Party, I said, listen, I can't do it. I'm sorry. I mean, I would like to, but there's too much else going on. But after I turned that down, I went to my hotel room and I got the call from Mark. Are you interested in being the vice chair of the party? And I asked him, well, what's that going to entail? Because if it's just going to entail the same amount of time, then I can't do it. And we went back and forth. He explained it to me. And that's how I ended up becoming the vice chairperson of the American Capitalist Party. So people, if you don't like it, blame Larry.
And Mark, I'm sorry. So there we go. So I did both.
I love it. I'm so happy. I'm so happy with the vice chair. I call him the co-chair.
He does.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I do like that piece. I also, though, I'm going to talk to my audience for a second. Guys, if you're watching this and you like this is a good back and forth, you enjoy it, I know you are, then click the like button. It does matter. If you don't click the like button, you know who likes that? Mr. Rhythm. His first name is Algo. That guy loves when you click the button that is known as Lima, India, Kilo, Echo. So please click that button. It does matter so we can move this forward. Also, if you don't mind, share this someplace. We post it, put it into a Facebook group, share it on X, whatever the case may be. Also, make sure you're following me on Larry Sharpe, Facebook, X, and Rumble. If you don't follow me on that, that means you think government schools are good. How can you think that? Don't think that, so follow me, and then you don't. If you do subscribe to me on Sharpeway, please click that all notifications. Literally, I'm not making this up. YouTube just decides you're a bot and unsubscribes you. That's what it does. So just go back and make sure you're subscribed because you might be a bot and not know it. So please do that if you don't mind. If you want your chat to go to the front, super chat me or rant me on Rumble. I'm on Rumble too. So rant me on Rumble if you want to, or super chat me. Either way is great. You can become a member if you like, please. A member for $4.99 per month. Please do so. Every member does count. The more members, the better, because more members, I can spend less time working and more time doing this. So do that. Also on Rumble also, if you don't mind. And by the way, the best part about this is we actually have a new member. Thank you so much, Sovereign Astrology, for becoming a member. Appreciate it. Every member counts. Please help out, guys. And the best part about being a member, by the way, if you are a member, you get to come on the show. Yes, you do. You get to come on the show to be with me and hang on me and talk trash. And our next one is going to be next Monday, May 2nd, 8 p.m. I've already got one. I'm getting two more. Come on board. Not just that, you get to submit to me reaction vids. You can submit it. Those videos I've been reacting to, that's you knuckleheads giving me stuff to react to. That's what it is. So jump on board, do that, become a member. There's value to this. But no matter what, click the button known as Lima, India, Kilo, Echo. All right. I have done my pitch. I appreciate it, guys.
Larry, just to help you out a little bit, I believe you said next Monday, May 2nd. Friday's May 2nd.
Next Friday. Thank you. Not Monday. Thank you.
It's this coming up Friday.
Correct. Yes, it is. It's Friday. Yes. It's like in 3 days. Correct. Yes. Not Monday. Friday. Thank you. Yes.
I've saved the day.
Somebody's paying attention. I appreciate that. It wasn't me, clearly, but somebody was paying attention.
You know what happened to me earlier today, Larry? Mark and I were doing our show, The Capitalist Corner, and I get so caught up in the chats. Mark was talking, and I was reading the chat, and then Mark said, "So what do you think about that?" And I said, "I don't know what you just said. I'm reading the chats."
Well, you said you heard one word.
Yeah, one word. I'd like you to hear more than one, just so we can keep going. It would be better. Just a couple of them at least. So yeah. All righty. I do want to grab some more comments if I could. Great. There are many of them here. Liberty Shamrocker says, "Great guess. I've been looking forward to this discussion all week." Well, there we go.
Me too.
There we go. Yes.
Thank you.
Way to go.
Mastermind says, "Capitalism isn't what's unpopular. It's end stage capitalism that is at issue." And I've heard that many, many times. I have heard this idea of end stage capitalism many times. What do you guys say to that?
Yeah, you've got Marxists in your audience, is what I say to that.
Well, not just Marxists. I think a lot of people talk about it. A lot of people ask that question, don't they?
End stage capitalism is a Marxist idea, that end stage capitalism is leading to the transition to communism. That's a Marxist idea. I don't that implies some kind of a predetermined order in which things go, which it doesn't have. I mean, how many of Marx's predictions have not come true or have been disproven? It's based on his whole idea. You know, a large part of it was based on the discounted labor theory of value. I mean, how much attention do you want to give to the Marxists? I don't know. It's a silly idea. That
They
there's
are
an
more and
end-state
more popular.
capitalism.
I mean, I think we
They
do
are.
have, and let me explain why I say this. Yes, I have Marxists in my audience. I have far left people in my, yes, that's true. So I do a lot of time talking to the far left because the far left hates Democrats, right? The far left has abandoned the Democratic Party.
Yes, I've been noticing
Well,
this with the American Communist Party.
Well, the Marxists,
Yes.
they hold on, but the American Communist Party say that they aren't leftists.
They're not. They say they're not. They say Marxists, and they try to make a distinction between leftists.
They do.
Yeah,
Yep.
left, Marxist, and right, and they say,
It's because
they're-
leftists want to vote in Marxism, you see, and they don't think that that's the way it's supposed to go. It's got to be the violent revolution, my friend.
Well, there we go.
happy
My
to
point
debate
being,
all communists.
I do think that we have to talk to them because it's growing.
Oh, I agree.
I think we have to.
I agree.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I do think we have to. So it's important that we do that. So yes, Sam is a friend. He says Mark is awesome. I want to join the Capitalist Party. Okay, you got a convert already. Look at that.
Thanks, Sam. Yeah, just go to AmericanCapitalistParty.org and click the member.
There we go. And that's
And watch
right there
our
at the
show
bottom
every
screen.
day, 12 noon on YouTube. Capitalist
There we go.
Corner.
9 a.m. Pacific.
Oh,
There we
boy.
go. So I also have some people who are very happy about my law. Ryan is 6'2", so he doesn't mind if the people under 5'9" pay extra taxes. Matt also is 6'1", so he's good. But Ashley says,
I'm 6'3", so I'm good with it too.
you're good too. But Ashley says, Michael and I are owing some taxes. So
Yeah, when I first saw that, I didn't realize what it was. It was a dig at my short stature. Now I know.
hold on. I just lost my audio. Hold on 1 second, guys. 1 second. I just lost my audio.
Oh, no.
Let me see if I can repair it real fast. I can repair my audio real fast. Can I?
I hear you for what it's worth.
I do too.
And I'm a
They
liar.
still hear you
Not
too.
repairing my
Everyone
audio.
hears you.
Hold on. 1 second, guys. I'm sorry. I got to repair my audio real fast.
All right.
Hold on.
The chat say that they're still hearing you.
Copy
Maybe
this out.
on these comments.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
We
Here we go.
did.
All right. Yes. I'm sorry. My audio decided that it didn't love me anymore.
But
So
we still
yes.
heard you though, Larry, and the audience said they heard
Yeah, no,
you.
I couldn't hear you.
Oh,
I lost my audio.
I see.
I got you.
Yes,
Okay.
I lost my audio. I could not hear you. That's the issue. But yes, but now I'm good. I am back. So it just decided it didn't love me anymore. So anyway, all righty. Let me go down and grab a couple more of these if I can. Ryan says, I can see the political ads now. Lucifer endorses capitalism. LOL. He's not wrong.
Well, the bringer of light. Okay, so I don't mind. I don't mind being the bringer of light.
Yes. Rick says Mark hasn't heard of Thomas Massey or Rand Paul. I do think you get a lot of pushback, particularly on Massey. Not as much Rand Paul, but I think Thomas Massey does push back on Republicans being more statist. Am I wrong?
No, you're right.
No, you're right. Yeah, I mean, both those guys, for the most part. I mean, they're people that I would appeal to switch parties if they'd be part of the list that I would try to send a mailer to and say, come over to the right side. That's the right side of the force, and let's make some real change.
For what it's
Well,
worth, I supported Rand in 2016. That's who I wanted to see get the Republican nomination.
Oh, yes. I agree completely. That would have been amazing. I completely agree. Yes. No, the one guy who became a libertarian was Justin Amash. He was a libertarian for about a year in Congress, and then he dropped out of the
Yeah,
Congress.
but can I talk to you about that for a minute? So when he was a Republican, he was saying such great things on social media. I DM'd him, and we carried on a DM conversation for a while. This is before the American Capitalist Party became an official party. But I said, dude, you got to get out of the Republican Party. You got to come over to the American Capitalist Party. If we get somebody like you changing your party affiliation, that's a huge win for us automatically, and it overcomes a lot of hurdles that we have to overcome now in local elections. But he went libertarian, so now he's sort of persona non grata in the political world, I think. So he needs to take a little bit of a break. But I would love for him to come into the Capitalist Party. I think he's a great potential candidate.
I agree completely. But he ran against the Republicans recently. He ran in Michigan for, I think, Senate.
Yeah, against Mike Rogers.
Yeah. So yeah, and the Republican establishment said no.
Yes.
Just went no. Republican establishment's like, no, don't like it at all. So yes. Mr. Taz says, I do like capitalism, but with some agreed upon restrictions. When companies grow too big, they start to bully smaller, innovative companies out of the market. Just need some kind of growth cap. And I think a lot of people do feel that way. I do think a lot of people either want some kind of cap, like, you know, the millionaires and billionaires, right? That's like the cap, right? They do. Or they want, like, once you get a certain level, we got to break you up, like the baby bells or something like that. It's a very common thought process. And I don't think it's a Marxist thing. I think it's just
No, that
a
is
lot of average Americans think that.
Sure. So ultimately, he's talking about monopoly. So you say that when a company's too big, well, what does that even mean? It's not like we have a metric that tells us, okay, now this company is too big. But the idea,
well, no, you could make one. You could say,
no, you could,
market share or whatever. You could.
But let's just back up a little bit and say, what is the purpose of that? What are we concerned about? And he says, well, they're pushing companies out. Okay. But that's creative destruction, right? You need to have companies, if they're not efficient and they're not satisfying consumer needs, then they need to go the way of the dodo. That's, I mean, we got rid of the horse and buggy. We needed to do that to make progress. The original idea of the Sherman antitrust law, one of them was the idea that these companies are getting so big that they can push smaller companies out and charge whatever they want. The problem is that Standard Oil kept the price of kept the price of oil low, not high. So the historical evidence that we have is contrary to the idea that these companies are going to get so big. Very much so. Yeah, I think it's. Let me just say, I think that it's really a nonsensical term. It doesn't really have any meaning in reality, unless the government puts restrictions on competition. In that case, yes, you end up with a government enforced monopoly. But private monopolies, as long as entry is open into the marketplace, they literally cannot do what the fears say they can do, and there's no instances of it happening.
I think you have to modify that a little bit. Right. Yeah, we're talking about two different kinds of monopolies. There's the coercive monopoly, where the government actually legally protects an industry and prevents competition. And there's what they call a market monopoly, where a company gains market share because it produces values better than anyone else. A market monopoly may indeed buy other people out. It may indeed buy other companies up. It may indeed take other people's ideas and buy them and incorporate them into their companies. But the second they stop innovating, the second they stop growing and producing values that the people want, they start losing market share. And that's when their competitors jump in. By the time Standard Oil was prosecuted by antitrust, they had lost 75% of the market by that time. But during the entire time, as Michael alluded to,
I get what you're saying. I do. Yeah. I get what you're saying. All I'm saying is that is not a popular stance at all. And you're a political party. And I'm just saying, our
stance is
too big to fail.
Well, that's a different thing. No, too big to fail is the government offering protections to an organization. They're saying, well, we are now sending special privileges to this particular organization. We're going at the taxpayer's expense to save it from failing. There's no too big to fail in a capitalist system. If you stop innovating, which means stop producing values that people want and are willing to exchange for, you go down. That's just the way it is. So the capitalist system, it incentivizes constant upward growth and innovation, which is good for us. It's good for you. It's good for me.
Let me move down this if I could. Matt says, hasn't capitalism led to basically everything becoming a monopoly, or is that just unregulated capitalism? That's his question.
That's also a Marxist iron law.
It's also neither, because everything is not a monopoly. No, that's not true. Everything is a monopoly. I mean, we can just look at the empirical evidence and see that's false. But we also have to separate, do basically a Misesian analysis, because it's not as if we have completely free market. So you have to understand economics and do analysis on these things to see what is causing what. It's not, there's nothing in economics where everything is held equal as in a scientific test. So psychologically, we have to be able to hold things equal in our minds and then see, okay, what is causing what variable leads to what other thing. And I mean, that takes time. And that's part of the reason that it's difficult to make these arguments, is because when you have to make an argument based on Mises's human action, for instance, 889 pages or 890 pages of dense economic thinking. And then you're competing with millionaires and billionaires are ruining us. It's a very difficult thing. And that, but what is the alternative? Do we just throw our hands
don't
up?
say you're pro monopoly.
No.
That is terrible marketing, is all I'm telling you.
No,
Nobody
Because
said-
I
really-
okay,
because
the
I-
pro monopoly stance.
But Larry,
is so
I really
misguided.
didn't say what I really said is
Basically,
no,
hard
Larry.
pass on this party if
But
that's
yeah.
the stance.
But Larry, that's not really what I said. What I really said was
I literally asked you if you're pro
no,
monopoly.
and I know.
Wait,
but
Larry,
there really
will you read
is
that
no
last? Will you
monopolies.
read that last one again? Because I got.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So wait. Okay, the pro-monopoly stance is so misguided to say it nicely. Hard pass on this party if that's what its stance is. My friend, our stance is pro-liberty, and that means
Way better. Say that.
If a company gets big in our world, in our free market world, it's because it's able to supply goods to you better than anybody else on the planet. And when it fails to do that, it will go away. Like the dodo, as Michael said. So we're not pro-monopoly. A monopoly would be the school system, the state-run school system. Monopoly would be the post office. These are coercive monopolies. The banking system, as it is now with its fiat currency, are more or less coercive monopolies that are entirely regulated. Insurance, medical care, all this stuff, these are becoming coercive monopolies that are ruining your lives. And we don't like that. We want you to have access to medical care. We want you we want you to have access to goods and services in a way that the government interfering in the price system fails to do.
Yeah.
Well,
Larry,
Daniel says Blockbuster was a prime example. He says
Yes,
Blockbuster didn't grow
absolutely.
and innovate with the times. He's on your side.
Larry, to be clear, it was tongue in cheek. What I really said, if you go back and listen, is these monopolies don't actually happen.
Okay.
The fear that you're going to end up with a monopoly that can charge whatever it wants is not going to happen. That's my point. I'm all for big companies if they're supplying the market, if they're doing what they're supposed to do. But in a competitive market, if they ever try to just jack up their prices and charge whatever they want, a coercive monopoly, like Mark said, they'd be out of business. They don't happen.
Yeah, and I want to jump on that a little bit, Larry, just a little bit.
Please, go ahead.
The railroads were trying to do this for a long time. They would form trusts with each other, and they would agree to jack up the prices, right? And everybody in the group would agree that they would all stick to this price. But inevitably, somebody jumped ship, so to speak, and would lower the price and screw up the entire trust and screw up their price fixing schemes. So what did they do? They formed the Interstate Commerce Commission in the 1880s so that they could get the government to do the price regulating for them. Now, in our world, people could get together and they could collude for prices, but there's always going to be somebody who's going to be able to break that. If competition is open and free, nobody can collude against you. You will
So then with that in mind, would you say that colluding for price fixing would be illegal or no?
No, but if somebody wants to collude to keep a price at a certain level, and the price is relatively high, that high price incentivizes an entrepreneur to come in and make a profit, and that puts a downward pressure on the price. These are just laws of economics. And if you cannot bar that person from the market, good luck. You better lower your prices, or that guy's going to take your business.
All right, well, you might have got Monkey C back. He said, thank you for your answer. Hope you guys go national. You might have got him back with that one, Mark. I think Mark saved you, Mike.
He might have.
I think he did. So, yes. So there we go. So I think we got some people back. Okay. Oh, good. Yes. But I guess my other concern is, when we're looking at something like that, the idea of what we have now, let me not talk theorems, what we have now. What we have now is, to your point, Mark, a lot of banks that are too big to fail. We have a lot of organizations like Amazon and such that just dominate the online space, and Google that dominates, search. I mean, it's not a monopoly, but Google's basically a monopoly. It isn't an actual monopoly, but it's 99% or whatever the number is of searches go somehow through Google, right? So it's massive. You have Walmart, which is massive on that, right? So we do have a lot of, maybe not physical monopolies, but very huge companies that clearly have an advantage. Is that we have that now? What is the answer for that now? End government? What's the answer to that now?
Well, no, I mean, I can let Michael go after this if Michael doesn't think I answer it all the way. But look, when you get big like that, you have an economy of scale, which means you can actually achieve bigger things for much, 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 much cheaper at discounted rates that the mom and pop stores simply can't achieve. So in a way, it's great that we have these examples of economies of scale that can bring us such great satisfaction. However, I would ask anybody who's worried about this to check back in 10 years and see if Google has this near monopoly, because there's DuckDuckGo, there's search engines all over the place where people don't want their information spread around online, and so they go to different servers like that. And there's going to be a time that Google will not have this monopoly anymore, and Amazon might change to something else, or there'll be a competitor who can do something even better than them. So you can never predict. This is sort of fortunate and unfortunate aspect of liberty, because people like predictability. They like
makes you feel good.
It makes them feel good. It's a bit of an illusion in a free society. You can't necessarily predict the future, but we can say that I'm sure in 10 years Google will not be a monopoly anymore, and not just because the government interferes, but because somebody better will come along.
So Mike has a question about foreign policy. He says, we need to speak about party viability, he says. Again, foreign policy. How does the capitalist party deal with the bad guys overseas? I'm on YouTube. I don't want to say the words and get canceled. The bad guys overseas and things like trade, the EU. How do you handle that aspect of foreign policy?
Okay, so go ahead.
Well, Mark and I are going to differ a little on this. Mm-hmm. But I'll let Mark answer the question.
No, if you want to go ahead, and then we can.
Okay, so my position, not the position of the party. So let me just put it out there. I am, the vice chair, co-chair of the party. I am absolutely opposed to foreign aid. I am absolutely opposed to interference in foreign wars. I firmly believe, and this is I have a position that most people don't have. I firmly believe that Israel is in the right. I firmly believe that they are the morally superior entity involved. And I also think that the United States of America has no business getting involved in it in terms of either blood or treasure. That's my position.
There are very few people who think that. Most either think Israel's right and give them everything.
Yes.
Israel's wrong, give them nothing. You say Israel's right and give them nothing.
Yes, I'm saying that if people want to help, if people want to donate of their own accord, go ahead. Right. I don't care about that. But there's no justification for the government to use force to confiscate people's wealth to send it to a foreign country so they can fight their wars. That's my view. Now, as far as EU and trade, I'm a free trader. Get rid of tariffs, allow trade.
But now, what if they have tariffs? Right. So what if they have tariffs? Do we do the equitable reciprocal tariff thing, or do we do no tariff? What do we do?
So first of all, equitable, reciprocal tariff has nothing to do with economics. It's a legal term, right? It has nothing to do with trade. Trump just happened to pick that up somewhere. It has nothing to do with the actual economics. A tariff is a tax on the importer. So what people are saying then is that because another country are taxing its people, we should tax our people.
Yes.
When the actual beneficial, obviously the best thing would be if everybody got tariffs, but they got rid of their tariffs. But the idea that countries are screwing us because they have tariffs and we don't is just that's not based on economic fact. It's also silly. This whole idea of a trade deficit is killing us. That's nonsensical as well. It's been known to be nonsensical amongst economists since 1776.
Okay.
So, and also the fundamental political principle of the American Capitalist Party is that the initiation of force is evil. So why is it going to be okay to initiate force against the citizens of America in the form of a tariff by preventing them from importing goods or charging them?
Well, the thought process would be, right, and this is, I'm not agreeing or disagreeing, I'm telling you the thought process. The thought process would be, no, we have to do the tariffs so that we don't have all of our own stuff being made in some country that may decide to go to war with us because they're not good. We're clearly, obviously, we're Americans, so we're perfect and always right. But the other countries, they're the bad guys. They may decide to go to war and not give us our goods. So we have to protect our own industry That's the argument.
Okay. Well, but see, and this is the inherent problem is there's so many different arguments that they put up, right? They're going to protect the industry.
Yep.
They're going to get rid of the income tax. They're going to get trade to just be fair. It's to protect, because of the poor Chinese laborers over there who were engaged in slave labor. We want to protect them. The argument that you just made, I do think has some merit, right? That we shouldn't be dependent on a potential adversary for military equipment.
Sure.
Right. But then the thing to do would be to ban buying the military equipment from that country, right? Don't play a game and put a 10%, 50%, whatever tariff on it. Just ban it if that's the case. If it's a resource vital for the national defense of the United States of America, and there's the potential that another country is going to use that against us by depriving it, us from having it, then we can do something, right?
All right. So let me go one step further now. What about the bad guys who are going to stop us from trading, right? So we got our trade routes, and now bad guys are going to come and they're going to bomb and close off the straits, and they're going to bomb the stuff, and they're going to harm us. So we have to go in and blow them up so that we can have our trade.
I would say, no, you don't have to blow them up. You don't have the right to have somebody else forced to go fight so that you can trade. I'm all for trade. Right. Okay. But if that happens, if it's overseas and somebody blocks off a port, well, it's unfortunate. What sometimes I find that people do is they say, okay, I'm going to uphold this perfect standard up here where everything is great. And every time you have a policy that's not going to measure here, we're going to say it's a bad policy. Neither I nor Mark nor anybody can offer a system that's going to give you utopia. That's why Thomas More wrote a satire. Right? It does not exist. It cannot happen. What I can tell you is what is the most moral system and what is the system that's going to produce the most prosperity. I cannot calculate for every contingency that's possible.
You have two.
But I want to
Marco, please
weigh in a little bit here because for the most part, Mike, I thought we'd have more differences there, but I only see a couple of differences. What bothers me about the political discourse today is that you have Trump and the administration talking about dominance. America has to be dominant again. They have to dominate. So, really, look, you don't have to dominate through political force. You need only dominate. You become the most dominant economic power on earth by being the freest economic power on earth. And so I agree with Michael's perception that we should tariff out to zero. The tariffs that any other country levels upon us, there is a bit of a smack in the face to us, but they're more a smack in the face to their own citizens because it raises the cost of living of their own lives while our standard of living goes up. Now, there's certainly an issue with processing military hardware, anything that has to do with the military in a country that is our avowed enemy, and we should decouple from that country in that respect. And trade with them with the understanding that the trade has to be reciprocal in the sense that China doesn't actually honor its own agreements with us. So they don't actually honor their end of the agreement, and they really should, or we should decouple from a country like that. I'm for it. I've written a paper about it, but it would take a long time to do because China is definitely not a good actor. So freedom all across the board with respect to everyone. When it comes to overseas powers like the ones we were discussing, inhibiting American shipping going from one place to another, or attempting to use force against American shipping, bombing ships, it is within our power to use the American military to take those folks out. And this is where Michael and I seem to differ, because I think that free trade has to be enforced by retaliatory force and the threat of retaliatory force against those who initiate it, and protecting American shipping is a valid reason for the Navy to exist, particularly in the world we have today. With respect to Israel, now Israel's I'm pro-Israel, by the way. I mean, all in Israel, all for Israel. I think they are the good guys in this battle and have been the good guys from the very beginning.
So you would also give them, or you're like Michael, you would not give them.
But let me piggyback off Michael. I don't agree with aid. I don't agree with foreign aid. I don't think we should be sending money to foreign countries. I don't think we should be fighting their wars. But there is a special relationship we have with Israel, where the aid is different in that it becomes aid that is reciprocated and spent back in the United States and actually supplies jobs back here in the United States. So it's not the same thing as losing it as when we just siphon it off to corrupt regimes in Africa or Central or South America, or God forbid Hamas.
Well, but let me give you a little bit of pushback on that. Most of our foreign aid is that way, not just Israel. Most of our foreign aid is jobs programs in America. I mean, that's most of our foreign aid. Not all of it, but most of it is. Ukraine,
I would
mostly.
That most of it, I could tell you the aid that we've given to the Palestinian people and Hamas, which is in the billions at this point, hasn't gotten back to any remunerative form. And Israel it has multiple ways in which they repay these loans for us, including being on the vanguard of Western civilization as we speak, fighting off, I think, what I would characterize as savages, so that we don't actually have to do that, because they have come here to fight us personally, and it is a threat. Islamicism, meaning the fanatical political wing of Islamism, is definitely a threat that needs to be gauged and controlled. And its main sponsor, of course, is Iran. So it's legitimate to use force against a country like Iran. It's legitimate to use force against people that violate our seaways and attempt to attack American shipping, for sure. Okay.
All right. There we go. There are a couple of people here who think that you, I think, are too idealistic, maybe, would be what people would think you are. Maybe that would be it. If I get it right. Rick says, I don't believe parties with a strong orthodoxy can achieve anything in the current U.S. system. In a parliamentary system, yes, but that's not the U.S. And that was my point from last year. In a parliamentary system, a guy like RFK Jr. doesn't have to join anybody. He could just get a percentage of the group and then be able to make a coalition government and say, hey, whoever wins, my coalition wants me to be HHS, and then my coalition is satisfied. We don't have that in America. This is to Rick's point. You kind of, the way we have it now, you kind of got to do one or the other. Do you still disagree either way? Does it not matter? Or would you want to change the system? Either one.
Whatever is necessary. But I just want to, like the guy just said, strong orthodoxy can't work unless it's in a parliamentary system. I just felt like we were having a debate moderated by Larry Sharpe. I could have went back against every point Mark made, and then Mark could have responded to me because we disagree on the issue. It doesn't stop us from being friends. It doesn't stop us from pursuing the same general agenda, and it doesn't stop us from being in the same political party. It's not a thing where you have to have the same viewpoint, that everybody has to, walk lockstep. But what it means is that there's certain principles that you just can't break. One of them would be endorsing Donald Trump for president, for instance. You know what I mean? There's just some things. We're not going to be advocating for anarcho-capitalism in the American Capitalist Party. That's just not going to happen. But there is plenty of room for differences.
Yeah, within the understanding of what individual rights means and the nature of government and how the government is supposed to respond to overseas threats. There's a latitude within there that Michael and I can have discussions, and he may persuade me back to his way. I may persuade him to mine. But there's probably even greater latitude within some of the other folks within the Capitalist Party as well. That's fine. They still hold to the principle of what government is. It's an institution of force, and that its primary goal, its only goal, is to service individual rights, and that's it. And so all of us would agree to that, and everything else would fall out of those basic moral principles.
Larry, there's a guy here. He says his question wasn't answered. I don't remember which question he asked, but he wanted to know what is the Capitalist Party's position, not your personal positions. That's what he's trying to get. Mark gave the party's position.
I gave the party's position.
Yeah.
Okay. International tariffs going down to zero. I believe in decoupling from China, but it would have to be over a long period of time, especially in the military, unless and until there are human rights changes and they embrace market values again.
And that's still being debated in the party.
This is being debated within the party. But that's my perspective.
So let me touch the other piece then, because you both said that Israel is right. Mark, you said that we should be Israel should be fighting, and they're on the vanguard of Western society or a Western culture.
Yeah.
A lot of people do not agree with you at all. Is that your personal, or is that the party's platform that is true?
I think that's my personal, first of
Okay.
all, but the party would have to side with the state that most closely. We have to understand this with respect to tons of things in our culture, which most closely aligns with our values. And when it comes to that, there's no comparison. There's no moral comparison between the Hamas and the Palestinian people who've chosen to make war on the Israelis. And it's in their founding documents. The Declaration of Independence of Israel has in it the context of rights for religious and ethnic minorities. It's baked into their constitution. It's baked into their checks and balances. It's baked into their due process. The Hamas charter has genocide and murder and an Islamicist goal baked into its charter as its material end. So I have to go on the side of the quote unquote relatively free parliamentary democracy.
Okay, but to be clear, that's yours, or is that the party's? I just want to be clear on on that issue.
The party, I don't know that the party has a particular side.
Okay.
Because the party does not go along with supporting foreign conflict. You know what I'm saying? It's not for subsidizing foreign powers. It's not for subsidizing domestic powers either.
Okay. So let me grab what a couple people said the same thing.
What I would do, however, is what the governments used to do when they came upon an issue. They came upon a conflict. There was going to be a war. They started a subscription service or a lottery. They raised money for a militia for a certain period of time to deal with the conflict that they had to deal with at the time. And then when it was over, that was done. There may be a place to raise subscriptions for people who want to support Israel, but I don't necessarily think I don't think it's a pro-capitalist perspective to use government subsidies, particularly because those subsidies would be coming from people who do not support the war morally, and you would be compelling them to finance a war that they disagree with, and that would be the initiation of force against other people. So,
okay, so people are saying, James says, what's the difference between the American Capitalist Party and the Libertarian Party? This is the second time that's happened. And another person is copying, also saying, this is Rick, it looks like the current LP leadership notwithstanding, the ACP is redundant to the LP. Come save the LP from the MAGA caucus and make a difference. And he then goes on to say, when you buy the LP, we'll throw in a free Larry Sharpe. So, well, I mean, I feel like some people are thinking that. Do you think that can the ACP and the Libertarian Party coexist, or does one have to go away?
I don't know about one having to go away, but I will say this. The very fact that Michael Rechtenwald was a prominent candidate within the Libertarian Party, almost got the nomination for president, was endorsed by the most prominent libertarian out there right now, most popular. That kind of, I think, illustrates just why we're not the Libertarian Party. We're the American Capitalist Party. First of all, we're different on national defense. We're stronger on national defense than what the Libertarian Party is. The Libertarian Party seems to think, at least a lot of its representatives, it's always America's fault. America's to blame. America's to blame. And it's almost like you can never go to war. Like you hear them say, I'm against war, right? I'm not against war. I'm against unjust wars. I don't think that every war is necessarily unjust, and sometimes it might be necessary, right?
Well, you know how I'd put it, Michael? Sorry to interrupt. I would say I am against war, but I'm pro self-defense and vigorous self-defense.
Yeah. But a big issue where we would differ with the Libertarian Party is over anarcho-capitalism. Anarcho-capitalism is just not conducive to individual rights and free market capitalism. And that probably is the biggest issue that we would have in difference with the LP. Also, intellectual property. They don't. I know that's not in the Libertarian Party platform, but it is a widely accepted thing. And somebody in the chat is asking about our immigration platform, which is also differs from a lot of those in the Libertarian Party. A Libertarian Party, as far as I know, does not have an immigration position in the platform. Larry, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, literally the most libertarians who actually are running for office are not open borders, but the party is open borders.
Okay. I don't think that's in the platform, though. Maybe I'm wrong.
Pretty sure it is.
I'm
pretty sure it talks about the free transfer of people back and forth over borders.
You might be right. It's been a while since I read it, but
Yep.
our position on immigration is open borders, except for if you're a criminal, if we're at war with a country, meaning a declared war, we wouldn't allow people from that country to just come traipsing over the border, and communicable diseases. Other than that, we're for open borders. I think I stated that correctly, Mark, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, there we go. Now we have our immigration policy. There we go. Robert asked, did I miss it? Are they willing to work with grassroots reparations advocates to secure repair for the descendants of U.S. chattel slaves? Are you guys for? Well,
no.
Okay, there we go. There we go. But isn't that what's the word I'm looking for? Isn't that repairing, righting a wrong? Isn't that?
What it's doing is giving money to people that were never slaves by taking it from people who never owned slaves.
Okay. That is your view. Okay. So then if we would that mean
now let me just clarify, because
hold on, 1 second.
Okay,
would that mean then that other reparations that were paid were okay because it was to the people who were harmed?
I would have to know the specifics. I mean, are you referring specifically
Japanese people who are interned,
and to Jews Germans, Jews, yes, because they were directly involved in the tragedies.
Okay, that would be why. Okay, did you want to go on, Michael?
I was just going to say, he asked grassroots, so I just want to make sure that I understand what he's saying, because if he's talking about if there was a private initiative to where people were trying to get, then I would say that's up to them if they wanted to do it. I certainly wouldn't want to stop them from doing it. That's not the government's business.
No, what Robert meant was there are grassroots organizations across the country who are trying to get the government
absolutely
to give money for ADOS. Do you guys know what ADOS is?
I haven't heard of ADOS specifically, no.
ADOS is American Descendants of Slaves.
Oh, okay. Okay.
ADOS. Yes.
Yeah, I think I have heard of that, but yeah, no, I would not support such a thing.
There we go. So, okay, that's good. That's also clear. Straight Chill Axon says, decoupling from China is the exact opposite of capitalism. The people have chosen, with their buying power, to shop China overwhelmingly. The ideology behind this party lacks consistency and clarity. I have a feeling you're going to have an answer for that.
Well, so we as we discussed, Michael and I have differences over this. This is my concept, only because of the threat that China poses to America's well-being, only because they use force in the marketplace against their own citizens and slave labor against their own citizens in order to keep prices artificially low, which we then endorse by sending products over there. Yes, the market does seem to want to go there because that's where capital seems to be flowing. In some respects, because capital is because it's artificially kept in that way by a government that's strong-arming its own people. I don't think that's right. And you're right, it does pose a certain paradox. That's why we're in the midst of discussing it within the party, and it's certainly a heated debate. And just to comfort you, I seem to be the only one in the party that holds this position, but I'm still thinking it through and figuring it out. And I may lose the argument. So we're not inconsistent. We're just people trying to we're actually trying to remain consistent. So don't worry about us. We're good.
Well, there we go. So Rick says, ANCAPs are vocal, but they're a small minority in the LP. I think he's right. I think most libertarians are not ANCAPs. There are some. In fact, a lot of ANCAPs actually just call themselves ANCAPs, but actually aren't Libertarian Party members. Because they don't like any of it. I think most ANCAPs don't care at all about the party. They lean towards it because it's the closest thing that they have, but I feel like they don't really know it. Am I wrong on this, Michael? You were part of the party for a while.
The people that I talked to were ANCAPs. I haven't sat down with every libertarian in the country, and I certainly haven't done a poll about it. But I do know that the most prominent voices, namely Tom Woods, Dave Smith, are ANCAPs.
I thought Tom Woods was a minarchist, but Dave Smith certainly is an ANCAP.
Well, yeah,
I
believe he's an ANCAP.
I think the ones in intellectual control are more or less ANCAPs. And so that's the movement. That's the movement's intellectual center, right? I mean,
I'm not sure. Maybe now. Maybe I'm not sure.
I get that sense. I get that sense, but I could be wrong.
James says, assuming that this party leans to the right, I don't know if that's true, but he does assume that. Does the Capitalist Party have any left-wing positions? It can be anything.
I don't know. The problem is I don't know exactly nowadays what left and right mean. But certainly we're for ending the war on drugs, and that's not been a right-wing position. We're pro-choice.
We're pro-choice, ending the war on drugs. Yeah, to me, right and left are odd things now, but I think they more or less fall the way they did in the National Assembly in France, which is the left wing are radical democratists and the right wing are traditionalists, and we are neither. So we can't consider us, and that doesn't mean we're in the middle. It just means we're neither. We're not radical democratists. We believe in a constitutionally restrained representative republic. And we're not traditionalists in the sense that, well, if we were preserving any tradition at all, it would be classical liberalism, which has gone out the window, 100 some odd years ago. And all of our positions can be boiled down to pro-choice. So everything is pro-choice.
Okay. So Jay says, is private equity capitalist?
Yeah, unless he means something different than what I think he means.
Why wouldn't it?
Yeah,
because I'm sure he's concerned right now. Many people are. In the current system, private equity has bought up so much housing, and it has made a lot of America's renters. It has, because of what it's done, it has been it's dominated a lot of the real estate market, and without question, service has been worse for renters, and pricing has gone up. So pricing has gone up and service has gone worse. That's why he's asked that question.
But again, that's also in the context of a mixed economy where there's so many housing regulations, especially here in California, where it's very, very difficult to get housing projects going. They have to jump.
New York too.
Yeah. Same with the East Coast. So, it's part of a capitalist system, but there also should be less to be honest with you, regulatory restraints on builders who want to build for people who want homes.
May I recommend the book by a great ANCAP, Brian Kaplan, Build, Baby, Build. Brian does an excellent job of explaining what actually causes the housing shortages in this country. It has mostly to do with zoning.
Yeah, but at the moment, that's our current system, right? So,
but then equity is not the problem. That's my point, is that private equity is not an issue. The issue is government policy that's causing the housing shortages.
So if there was more building and private equity bought up more building, that's fine. That's the way it's supposed to be.
Ultimately, it's a matter of supply and demand, right? And so in a free market, the supply of housing and the demand for housing would determine the price.
Got it.
So if they bought land and deliberately restricted it so that, just didn't build anything there so no one can buy a house, I suppose they could jack up the price, but that doesn't seem like it would work well.
But then again, it doesn't work well because it incentivizes entrepreneurs to come in and build because the prices are. So it's like when the market is free, people like that can try to corner it and try to raise prices and keep prices high, but inevitably they can't.
lastly, I want to grab what Rick says. Rick says, is Tom Woods anything in the LP? Dave Smith just used the LP and abandoned it when it suited him.
I think Tom Woods is an intellectual, and is he part of the Mises Caucus?
I don't know if they're officially members of the party. I'm not, I don't know that, but I do know that they are the loudest voices
for sure
that members of the Libertarian Party listen to. Part of this, obviously, you end up getting conflated because there's the small L libertarian and then there's the Libertarian Party, and it makes some of this. We're more the John Locke party. Somebody in the chat says, is this more of a John Locke or a Rousseau party? Definitely Locke, not a fan of Rousseau at all.
Well, there we go.
No, I hate Rousseau.
Rousseau gave Rousseau.
Well, because John Locke gave us the American Revolution and Rousseau gave us the Reign of Terror. So I'll take the American Revolution over the Reign of Terror any day.
There we go. You got monkey see, monkey do back. You got him back. Okay. There was a bit, but you did get him back. That's
Love
good.
you, monkey do. Thank you.
He's great.
There we go. So guys, I want to be clear. If you like this, then please click the button known as like. I know I ask you, so please do so. If you haven't shared it, please share it around. It is important. Follow me. As always, it's important that you follow me. But also go check out the American Capitalist Party. It's at americancapitalistparty.org, not .com, .org. Get it right. Check it out. Do that if you would and see what's going on with these guys. It's important. They do a show. How do we find your show, Michael?
I post the link to it every day on both Facebook and my X feed. Mark does the same on his X feed, and it's also available on YouTube every day at 12 o'clock, the Capitalist Corner. We have a great time. We have great discussions, current events from a pro-capitalist individual rights perspective. There we go. Absolutely. James asked, oh, hold on. Let me find Katie's question, but before I go there, I know her question. Can I tell you? Can I ask? Can I answer it? Whatever.
Yeah. What was Katie's question?
Katie's question was, if you did away with Social Security and other social services, how would somebody like her who is disabled and can't work, what would happen to her if other people? Okay. So again, this is similar to the question that you came with, at the beginning of the show.
She probably didn't hear that. She probably
no. But my only point is that it's the wrong question, because buried within the question is the assumption that other people owe Katie to take care of her. And my heart goes out to anybody that's disabled, right? But the fact that one person's disabled does not put a mortgage on somebody else's time and effort to take care of them. I'm sorry, it just doesn't. It certainly doesn't justify the use of force. And I seriously doubt that Katie would advocate for a friend of hers to go put a gun in somebody's face and take their money to pay for Katie's health care. But when you vote for politicians to implement these programs, that is what you're doing. And we should never lose sight of that. So first of all, I don't think that Katie would end up without anybody helping her. But the broader moral point is that nobody on this planet owes anybody else simply by virtue of that person being born. And that is the principle that we need to fight for.
Doesn't our culture tell us that we are to help those who are in need? Doesn't our religion tell us this? Doesn't our culture tell us this? Don't our families and friends tell us this? Doesn't our community tell us we're supposed to help people who are in need?
So to paraphrase Barbara Brandon, the late Barbara Brandon, Larry, if you and the people who think that way choose to help such people, nobody is going to stop them. You are free to help whomever you want. What you are not free to do, or ought not to be free to do, is use force, use the barrel of a gun to extract money from other people to satisfy your altruistic desires.
And so I also want to piggyback on that, because I agree, of course, with everything that Michael's saying, but I also wanted to, I don't know if this is reassure Katie or not, but these programs that have created a great deal of dependency, or maybe you've even paid into them for many, many years before you became yourself. So in fact, you are owed this money that you paid into the system. So it would be terribly unjust to simply cut you off money that was forcefully taken from you, and that you are owed now. So systems like this we would have to decouple from them very slowly over time in order to give the economy time to react, in order to give charitable institutions time to get online, in order to pick up the slack for people. Now, the problem that many people are going to have, I'm not saying this is you, Katie, but many people might have, is that these private organizations are now going to have rules that don't necessarily apply in a federal system. Rules with respect to drug use, rules with some of the rules they're trying to apply now with the SNAP cards that people use food for. But this is sort of the issue when you have to put your life in the hands of others. You also have to abide by their rules. But I think the private rules would be far better and far more effective than the public ones right now, because right now you're at the whim of a political football that's being kicked around right now for the purposes of gaining political leverage, and that would not be the case in a private system. So you would be, I think, far more protected in a private system, but we'd have to decouple it from it very slowly, and it would probably happen over a couple of decades. You couldn't do it in a single administration or even 3 administrations.
So let me say thank you to Craig for becoming a member. Appreciate it, my friend. I do appreciate it tremendously. But let me go back. Matt is saying, which I think a lot of people are talking about. Matt says, everyone talks about morals, but whose morals? Some people think it's moral to genocide and Israel having a right to defend itself. Others would say it's immoral to blow up innocent children by the thousands. Now, I get where he's going, right? His concept here being, well, you're one person saying, is it moral to put a gun in somebody's head, or what Michael says, to give me money so I can give somebody some help for whatever reason? And then someone's saying, well, no, it's moral. The moral is we have to go to war to defend Western civilization, so lots of people have to die. That's a just war versus an unjust war. Who decides what a just war is? Who decides what makes sense, right? Your idea of having to defend the shipping lanes still requires force. I got to pay tax for it. So you put a gun to my head to pay for the Navy, which is valid, but not a gun to my head to pay for Social Security or whatever.
There would be no guns to your head.
There
would be no gun to your head to pay for taxes in a capitalist system. It would be a voluntary tax system. Now, you may think that's absurd, but of course, many plans have been advanced as to how that would look.
Sure.
But so people who did not support, say, protecting the shipping lanes wouldn't have to pay for the Navy. But people who understood that, our livelihoods depend on goods and services being delivered to us in a timely fashion would. And those who don't, they get a free rider aspect, off of the people who do believe that those things need to be paid for. Now, Michael, did you want to say something about the moral subjectivism that this guy
did. I very much did.
Please.
First,
Please.
Matt Ice, hit me up either on X or Facebook, DM me, and we can have a longer discussion about this than what we're going to be allowed to here. But you asked a question, whose morals? It implies that, well, this guy has this morals, this guy has this morals, as if there's no moral truth. But there are moral truths. And I don't think that Larry is going to give me the 2 hours or so I would need to really break down the subject.
You kill me. Do it.
Yeah. But there is an objective morality. And that's part of the debate, part of the discussion that we need to have is which is the right morality? What is the right morality? Is Christian morality correct? I believe no. And I think I can demonstrate it. I think I can demonstrate very soundly that the objectivist ethics is the correct ethics. But that would take a very long discussion to happen, but the very question implies that there's no right or wrong, that it's just everybody has their own view and it's a matter of opinion. And with that, I vehemently disagree.
As do I, without getting into the minutia of who's doing what overseas.
Okay. Rick says something very important. He goes, we could finance government through super chats. Yes, so super chat me, guys.
I don't even know if you could finance Larry through super chats.
You probably couldn't. So yeah, if you want to super chat me though, please do so. I'm happy to take any super chats. Happy to have them. I do appreciate it. I promise I will not bomb anybody in any country. None of them. I will bomb literally nobody. I will bomb absolutely nobody at all. Michael says, like, share, and subscribe as you get this interaction and open discussion from mainstream media or major part. You don't get, this is only from me, right? This is only from me. You get this kind of conversation only from me. And I've met half these people also, which is even better. So yes. Liberty Lady says you can also rumble rant. Also correct. Guys, we've been on it for about 90 minutes now. I want to ask, did I miss something? Is there something that we should be talking about that I didn't do it? That I didn't cover?
Larry, you've been wonderful as always.
You've been great.
Excellent. Yes.
Larry, can I tell you something before we go?
I drop truth bombs.
No,
Go ahead.
I just want to tell you something about you personally as a human being, right? You know, people often, and I see this happen to Mark too. I know it's happened to me, although I'm not quite the celebrity either of you are. But you assume that they assume people are just sort of these characters out there on social media, right? And I've heard people say some nasty things about Larry. I'm not going to repeat them, but Larry, you are a really good guy, right?
Oh,
like,
thank you.
Like, no, but seriously, like I was 3 months out of prison, I think. And you're like, yeah, you can come on my show. We'll talk.
Yep.
Whenever I've run into you in public, you've taken time out of your schedule to sit down, talk with me, give me advice, build. When I wanted to have a debate with Jeremy Kauffman, you said, yeah, come on the show and do it. When I contacted you here, you said, come on, come on. Yep. And you've told me in the past, you're like, well, yeah, I'm a part of this caucus. You know why? Because they asked me. I believe in this stuff and I just want to do it. And all of my experience with you, including stuff that it doesn't even involve this, that you've tried to do for me and just didn't pan out, tell me that you are a good guy. And I just want to let you know that I noticed it. And thank you very much for having us on tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Larry. We appreciate it.
I appreciate that, guys. Yes, I do appreciate that. Thank you for coming on. And guys, I want to ask everyone here who is watching, please do me a favor. As always, click the button that is like, but not just that. After this is over, Mr. Rhythm, Algo, he loves when you comment after the live. He really likes it a lot. So afterwards, please comment. And so the comment I'm going to ask you to do is, please tell me, what's your thoughts? What's the biggest pro or con, either one, of the American Capitalist Party? The biggest pro or con, put it in the chat after we're done. I will respond. I'll bug Michael or Mark to come back and respond to. I'll bug them. So they'll come. One of them will come, probably Michael. I'll get, because he likes fighting. So he'll probably come back. But somebody will come back and answer those questions if you could. Not just that, if this is not live and you watch it the next day, or something else I posted on, do me a favor. As soon as you're done, you're going to see a couple of things pop up. Pick and watch another video. He loves that too. I will see you all very soon.
Peace.